let's go to our resident expert, Fox News senior congressional reporter, Chad Pergram. Chad, what's the latest?
Chandler, good morning. Well, this bill has now passed the final vote on the House floor to cut funding for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and USAID. The vote was 216 to 214. There were no Democrats who voted for this, and there were 2 Republican noes, Mike Turner, Republican of Ohio, and also Brian Fitzpatrick, a Republican of Pennsylvania. Both of them have been big defenders of certain foreign aid programs, in particular some of the aid going to Ukraine. But they have passed this bill. The House and Senate have now lined up on what's called a rescissions plan. This is where Congress already appropriated this money, sent this money out the door back in March, and they have now clawed that back. So this now goes to President Trump for him to sign. They've not used a maneuver like this to kind of cancel this spending ex post facto in 30 years, but they have been successful here tonight. Now, you talked about that special maneuver to approve this without actually voting on the bill. What happens in the House of Representatives is you have to first approve a rule that establishes the parameters for how you're going to consider a piece of legislation. The reason that they didn't have to vote is they wrote the rule in a way that once they passed the rule, it simultaneously magically also approved the bill. So this saved time. They got this done more quickly here, so they have passed this bill. And again, a lot of overnight sessions here in both the House and Senate the past couple of nights. They passed this just after midnight here on the East Coast in the House of Representatives. The Senate approved its bill, again, a narrow margin over there at 2:28 in the morning. But this now goes to President Trump to sign. The other thing we should point out, Chanley, that this might be the first of several different rescissions opportunities by the Trump administration to try to claw back some of this money. They're indicating, it's hard to cut money in Washington, and they have other targets that they want to go for. DOJ recommended many of these cuts. Remember that what DOJ puts out there doesn't mean that it's just cut automatically. Congress has to get involved because it has the power of the purse. And so that's what we saw writ large tonight on Capitol Hill. And this was low-hanging fruit. They talk about how much the federal government spends each year. It's about $7 trillion. They're about $37 trillion in debt. And this was kind of a drop in the federal spending ocean. It was originally $9.4 billion. That's billion with a B. That was reduced in the Senate because they put back in some money for what's called PEPFAR, that's the global AIDS program, and reduced this package to just $9 billion. So that's pretty paltry overall. But a lot of Republicans said they have to start somewhere. And even though, as one congressman, Eric Burleson, Republican from Missouri, put it to me, he said, you might try to swing for the fences. He said, but sometimes you have to just accept a base hit. So this was just a single when it comes to cutting federal spending tonight, Chandler.
And Chad, the money going towards public broadcasting was a highly debated topic. I know we've covered it here on Fox News quite a bit. I know that you've also worked in public broadcasting in the past. Talk to us about how exactly taxpayer money doesn't go directly to public broadcasters, but indirectly.
Yeah, it's a rather complicated formula. So the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, it gets its money directly from Congress. And NPR, for instance, it gets very little, just in the single digits in terms of the money from the federal government. But what happens is the individual member stations, be they in Portland, Maine, or San Diego, California, or wherever, they then get money from the CPB and purchase programs like Morning Edition and All Things Considered from NPR. So that's kind of the middleman. So if you cut off this funding, it doesn't, really affect NPR directly that much, but directly it does because then the stations don't have that funding to pay NPR to purchase those programs. And so NPR suddenly has a deficit. And this is where some supporters of public broadcasting say that this would absolutely decimate public broadcasting. And some Republicans are cheering this. I talked to Kevin Cramer the other night. He is the Republican senator from North Dakota, and he indicated that North Dakota Public Broadcasting, his term here, is that got about 26% of its budget from the CPB. And he said that's too much. He viewed that as an indictment, that a quarter of their funding came from the federal government. So, this is going to be a big debate to see what happens in public broadcasting. Republicans have tried to defund public broadcasting since the 1990s. When Newt Gingrich was the Speaker of the House in 1995, one of the things they wanted to do was get rid of this. And there was a public relations battle staged by, public broadcasters. And they brought in characters from Sesame Street, Big Bird, Bert and Ernie. They were actually in the hearing room. And, the effort by the Republicans back in those days, 30 years ago, they just could not compete with that public relations campaign by the Muppets, essentially. And so public broadcasting was not defunded, but it has been tonight.
Right, there goes Big Bird, as you said, Chad. We have a couple of minutes left. Real quick, what is next on the agenda there?
Well, the interesting thing about this bill tonight, and I didn't have this on my dance card, as I said on Fox News at Night just a bit ago, is that the debate and vote on this bill to kill the funding for USAID and public broadcasting was kind of swiped by an internal Republican squabble and debate about the Epstein files. I really didn't see the merging of those two issues about public broadcasting and the Epstein files coming together. Nobody else did either. There were some Republicans and lots of Democrats as well who suddenly want these Epstein files to be released. So Republicans had to put together a resolution tonight, which is non-binding, and they haven't put a debate or a date on this here as to, to ask for those documents related to Epstein be released. That's an issue that certain conservative Republicans have a lot of interest in and been pushing for that. That's a key part of the MAGA base. But that certainly delayed this debate and vote tonight to defund the CPB and also USAID tonight with the Epstein files. Again, that's something that, doesn't naturally go together, but that's what happened tonight here on Capitol Hill.
Right. Very contrasting topics there, but you never know. It's always something surprising there on Capitol Hill. We're so grateful to have you, Chad, our expert. Thank you for staying up late or in the morning. Good morning there in D.C. We'll let you go for now.